Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining our webinar, How to Simplify Test Data Management, No Coding Required. Speaking today is Eric Jeté, the Global Product Line Manager at Averna, as well as Matt Jensch, Director of Innovation. Before we begin, I'd like to inform everyone they will be automatically muted, but will be answering questions near the end. And now let's begin.
Thanks, Amy. Hi, everybody. My name is Eric. I've been system engineer most of my career and today responsible for the off-the-shelf product at Averna. I'm joined today by Matt Jensch, our leader on the innovation team. Matt, can you give us a small introduction?
Sure, thanks, Eric. Hey, everyone. I'm Matt, and I've been at Averna for almost 15 years. Throughout my career, I have been part of multiple departments linked to both project execution as well as product development. And one thing that's always been driving me is my passion for simplifying test engineering.
That's exactly why we are here today. We would like to review some of the common challenges that companies face throughout product development phases, as well as some tools that can help you easily overcome them.
Yeah, today, Eric will discuss some of Averna's solutions and demonstrate how Averna has simplified the process behind the deployment and management of test software, making sure you have the right software deployed to the right test assets in the right factories anywhere around the world.
Yeah. Before we get to all that, let's take a minute and present Averna and who we are. So Averna is a global test validation and engineering system integrator. We deliver innovative solutions across the entire product life cycle. We have 9 locations worldwide, and most of our product development work is done at our headquarters in Montreal, Canada.
Yeah, and the fact that Averna has its own product line often comes as a surprise to many of our customers who we have only worked with on custom test solution products. There's no question that a solid amount of our business is linked to design and customization services, but turning that knowledge and experience to develop a range of off-the-shelf products to support our customers simply makes sense.
That's correct. By working with customer in the field, common problems become obvious. And as a result, we've developed different solutions to address those challenges in many areas like RF testing, broadband, smart data management. So let's get right into it and address Industry 4.0. This is the next evolution, and asset management is at the heart of it. This is achieved primarily through automation, data insight, and machine learning. And by reducing the amount of manual labor, the data that our machine, your machine exchange is especially important to increase product quality or simply conserve it, right?
Yeah, manufacturers continue to push boundaries in creating products with more functionality while making them more robust. This means that their test stations need to integrate a higher test coverage while maintaining high quality standards and keeping the costs low.
Yeah, not only that, but they needed to do it quickly. These days, it doesn't matter what you're manufacturing, competition is fierce. Your product needs to be better, cooler, cheaper. This increased the need for efficiency, for sure. A faster feedback loop on the test and quality data will enable faster decision in the manufacturing and design process and will help prevent quality issue. For example, market like medical device, telecommunication, transport, and defense have regulation and standard that are often rigorous. In many cases, product failures can become life-threatening, so obviously quality cannot be compromised. Managing your test and quality infrastructure optimally will definitely reduce the time spent preparing for those audits or simply increase your product quality.
Yeah, we take test data very seriously. In fact, we have from the very beginning. Back in '99, when Averna was founded, we developed the Prologent brand of products dedicated to analyzing all the test data generated on the manufacturing floor and organizing it into simplified reports and dashboards so users could leverage it. Because quite frankly, that is still the major issue with smart data. Getting it is not the hard part, but understanding and leveraging it is.
Yeah, Matt, you mentioned Progent, which is valuable once you have the data. The data are in and ready to be analyzed. That said, the data you provide to your test station is as much, if not more, important than the data you receive. As they say, garbage in, garbage out, right?
That's right, totally. So typically, if you look at the software, a station will be running some flavor of a high-level test sequencing software. Sequencers such as NITest generally help you develop, debug, and deploy test systems, but they do require a fair amount of learning before you become proficient. And that is why we developed Averna Launch, a unified test executive that runs on top of TestEnd. Launch unifies your end-user experience in a single, simplified interface that is optimized for test manufacturing operators. One of the patterns we were seeing with Launch, particularly during NPI, was that customers were calling us back to help create new test sequences or modify existing ones, and they were usually in a rush to do it. And that is why we created the test plan editor. I'm going to now pass it over to Eric so he can show you how it works.
Thanks, Matt. Let's take a step back and explain some bases here. So TestTan is a software that helps engineer develop automated test and validation system. The main advantage of TestTan is the ability to basically run tests in parallel, synchronize communication with your device, take measurements, connect to databases, to your shop floor controller, do this, do that. And so TestTan look like this. It's a development environment, as you see the screen. There's a lot going on in that screen. There's a lot of things you can do with that. You can interact with .NET, C#, LabVIEW, all your instrument, and more. Having access to that level gives you a lot of control, don't get me wrong, but you need to know what you're doing. It's not for everyone. So this environment is good for a software developer, test engineer, but not so much for operators and technicians. When it comes to the production floor, you want something easier, more polished. This is where Averna Launch comes in. It's a test executive with a nice UI that allow the operator to perform basic function like loading a test, starting it, monitoring it, aborting a test, whatever. So, and company can develop their own GUI to support this function. There's no problem there, or use a off-the-shelf one like Averna Launch. So we'll go to a small demo. So let's start with the operator interface I just talked about. So Averna Launch. Averna Launch gives you the ability to run a test. So it's for the operator on the production floor, and it provides the ability to input a serial number, select the proper test, load it. As you load it, you'll see the test on the left-hand side. So that's the whole sequence of tests that will run. You can start it, pause it, abort it, like I said. And on the right-hand side is more of the live version of the execution. So you'll see measurement action being done as they run. And if you have proper limits, you'll have pass and fail in here. And at the end, you'll have a nice report. We've included a couple of others feature in Launch, like multi-languages to help with factories around the world, a way to configure the UI to have multiple units being tested at the same time. So Launch gives you the ability to run a test. It does not give you the ability to modify a test, what we're talking today. So to modify a test, you'll have, but you want to modify a test at some point. So let's give an example. So let's say you're building a smartphone. So there's a battery in here. You do have in place your test today that tests that battery. It's a full charge, full discharge. But during NPI, R&D, or even talking to customers, you realize that it's not the way that people use their phone. It's not always fully charged, fully discharged. They go to bed, they fully charge it. They wake up, they commute, they maybe plug it in the car to use the GPS at lunchtime, things like that. And it might have an effect on the battery life. So knowing that, you want to increase your test coverage, or you want to adapt it to this new reality. And that's where test editor, test plan editor comes into play. So I've loaded test plan editor in here with a preloaded sequence battery cycling example. So how convenient with the example I just gave, right? So you see in here, I will load it also in the background in launch to show you the parallel between the two software. So remember, launch is for execution, test plan editor is for edition. So gonna load it in launch. You'll see the whole sequence, the same sequence, the same test in here. And in test plan editor, let's wait a little bit. So serial number, choose the right operation. So there you go. You have the whole sequence in the background in launch. As you can see, you see categories and test in that three. So you have the same representation in test plan editor. You do have the categories on the left-hand side and the test on the right-hand side. So the UI is a little bit different, and it's normal. We want to have access to the extra data in here on the right-hand side, where you can change the input parameter and the limits. And as you see right now, it's a discharge by percentage. And you have three tests that's going to execute at 75%, 50%, 25%. And at that time, the test will, let's say, measure the time to get there, the voltage, and the amp. So now you have kind of a test that monitors at different stages how the battery perform. So this is an example of a test in here, and it's a little bit like in Excel. So you click on a cell and you just change the number there, input parameter, the percentage that we have, or the limit in here. There's no problem. So now you've been able to edit that sequence, change a little bit of it without any test on experience or coding knowledge and things like that. And there's a nice feature that we've added in here, because the person that will use test plan editor is not necessarily the one that uses that created the sequence in the first place, or the reusable module that I will talk later about it. And so you don't know all the parameters where the end of it or the limit. So we've added that feature. If you go over a specific parameter, it's gonna be red in the UI, so you know there's a mistake somewhere to prevent errors, things like that. So here is not really dangerous, but imagine you're controlling a power supply that powers your unit, and you do a typo, or you don't know, you think it's in millivolt and you put 2000 volt in here. I mean, the product will blow. So it's a nice feature to protect you from doing mistakes in here, and it's very visual. So I just saved this the sequence, so file save, and that's basically it. So now we've been able to edit a sequence, changing some input parameter, creating a ramp, changing the limits, and things like that. That brings me to the next thing we can do in here. So it's really changing the scenario of a sequence, and now you have it at the bottom. So I've mentioned reusable blocks. So reusable blocks are full-on test stand sequences that have been pre-programmed basically by you internally, if you do have the knowledge, or if you decide to hire someone like Averna as integrator, do that, provide those blocks to you. The point here is that since it's a test stand sequence, each of those blocks are test stand sequences. You can do it all. The power test stand is there. You can connect to any system you have internally. So imagine that these blocks could be to test your unit or specific to a type of instrument that you have on your production floor. So, and once it's coded, people can reuse those modules. And the good thing about it is that more you reuse it, you weed out the bug from it, and at some point you can be in confidence that those blocks perform well, and the person designing a new sequence don't need to think about QA the driver for the instrument, or the thing that connects to your shop floor controller or your order system, things like that. So you can build your test scenario, focus on your product and test, and be confident that those blocks perform correctly. So that's about it. In this example here, we do have a library of reusable blocks based back for battery example, right? So calls under that type of test that I have in here is charge by percentage, charge by time, discharge by percentage, full charge, things like that. So it allows you to control the scenario of charging, discharging the way you'd like based on time or percentage of the battery. So imagine all the scenario you can do with just these few calls in here. So I'll do an example to add a block in here. Take also into consideration that I do only have an example in here, and you may have multiple categories with multiple calls, multiple test and reusable blocks in here. So you build your library and then you have something solid. So let's add a charge by time and discharge by time. And sorry. So I've added a charge by time. So one more category has appeared in the left-hand side, one more test on the right-hand side. I changed the time for 300 seconds, so 5 minutes. And there you go. So now you have one more charge for 5 minutes at the end of that test. If you like to have more of a ramp or a monitoring test, you can add it also. So it's the same test, it's based on time. You can change the parameter in the limits also for each of them, and you just have to use the plus at the bottom right hand side, and you have it. You have for now moment where you could change the input parameter and use like at 5 minutes monitor voltage in amp, at 10 minutes, 15, at 20, and then you have more of a monitoring test than a single test. Let's add a discharge to it. So let's say 3 minutes something, so 200 seconds. It's good. Let's clean this up a little bit. Remove those 5 seconds test and save the sequence, and basically we have it. We've been able to change parameter in controlling when, changing limits really easily, adding calls to it, changing the scenario, and it's been done without any programming language, knowledge, not language, knowledge, sorry. I'm gonna reload the sequence at launch just so you see it still in background and in test plan editor. And other things you can modify also in test plan editor, but for sure you can change the category names, the test name, double click, right click, whatever. You can use the icon also. You have all it in here. Changing those names, make them meaningful, because those names basically end up in your report at the end of one execution. It's not the name of the reusable block that is used by default, yes, but then you can tailor it to what you're doing and have a report that is more meaningful. Therefore, the person at the repair bay maybe might know better what went wrong with one execution, right? And you can change the limit as we've seen. One thing here that's missing is context to user though, because we've said that people using test plan editor might not be the person that created the sequence or the reusable blocks in the first place. So we've added a box in here at the bottom. It's custom text that can be input by the person that create a reusable block. So we all know where documentation ends up, right? It's in the trash. Nobody reads the manuals. So having it in here in the software, it's a good thing. So the person that create the blocks can give you as much detail on how that blocks performed or is executed. So for instance, in here, I do have a charge by time for 5 minutes. So is it do we measure voltage at amp and then wait 5 minutes? Is it we wait 5 minutes and then we measure, or is it we measure maybe 100 times for 5 minutes? I don't know as a user of test plan editor if I'm not the one that coded that block. So keep in mind that the text at the bottom can be really meaningful, and that's the goal of it. Right now, I just have some explaining basic thing about my limits and the thing, but you can have it all in here. Other action like duplicate, move up, move down a whole category to change your scenario. The duplicate is a nice feature because let's say you have a ramp of I don't know, 1,000 tests under one category, you want to duplicate it, it's copy paste, you have it. That's nice. So now we've seen how to execute, how to edit without any test and knowledge. And now we're moving where we want to try it out. I mean, we've just edited something, so we want to try it out. So then we can use Averna deploy to do that. And Averna deploy will make sure to send the proper files to the proper asset. So the UI is divided by 3 in here. So you have package. Packages is a collection of files. So think of it of a big zip file that contains everything about a specific test for a product. So we do have the smartphone test file example at the bottom. So that's the package I'm talking about. Everything is in there, the firmware, the limits, the test sequence, and all. Then you have the station. That's really easy to understand. It's a physical station on your production line or in your lab as development station. And in the middle, you have the channel. The channel links the two together. Think of it of a distribution channel. So any station subscribed to that channel will receive the update meant for them. So today I have 2 examples to show you. So I have a development channel and a production test file channel at the bottom of it, and that's a good thing. So all the production station is are subscribed to the production channel, and the development one to the development one. And we do have the smartphone test file package here that I will open. So we now we just change our sequence in test plan editor. We want to try it out. We want to test if it's working right. Keep in mind also that in here in the system, everything is pre-configured for this webinar. So I do have already stations that are running a specific version of that and also just making sure to save the latest version in here in test plan editor. Going back and deploy, we do have a package. I was saying, so we do have a package already existing, already on your production floor. It's version 3.000, as you can see in here, so it's already running. Today, we're changing that scenario based on what we learn, and we want to upgrade that version. And the first thing we want to do, we want to try it out and not push this new version to all the production stations because maybe there's a problem with it. We want to qualify the file first. So let's upgrade the package first. So you click on the icon upgrade. You have a new version. You can decide of the digit as you like. So it could be 301 or 4, and you can save it. You can put some notes in there, and everything is tracked who did what and where. The next step is to upgrade the development channel. We want to try that new sequence in a development environment. So you select the proper package under that development channel. You upgrade it to 301. You save. At this point, every development station subscribed to the development channel is now able to run your latest and greatest version 301. And again, in the channel, everything is tracked. When did that change happen and everything. So now you have a day, a week, whatever to try it out, qualify this new package, come back to edition if you need to, create a new version of it, and when you are satisfied, you will want to push it to all the station in production, and now use 301. Maybe you don't have any development station. Maybe you don't have a lab. A small production often only has a few stations on the production floor, so you'll need to share it at some point. So you might not have a development channel created for that purpose because you don't really have stations subscribed to it. So now with deploy, you can specifically choose one station, as I'm doing here, and subscribe it to that development channel. Or if it was a production station, remove the production station, production channel to it and subscribe it to the development one. So then you go down to the production floor, you try your thing on that new station that you borrow from production for that day. You're satisfied with it, it's working well, you did your due diligence, you go back to the production channel, you upgrade it to version 301, the one that you know it's working, you save it, and now all the production stations that are subscribed to that channel is now running 301. And if you ask me which station is subscribed to that channel, well, you have it here inside the channel, production channel in here. You look under the tab station, and you do have 5 stations in here. And in my example, I made those names meaningful with location, type, and ID for my station. So now I have 5 stations in, let's say, Guadalajara, on a production floor, and I have 5 stations, 1 through 5, and those stations now can run 301. And that's it with the demo, I guess. So now we've seen launch that you can execute your test on the production floor. We've seen test plan editor that allows you to modify test scenario, adapt quickly to your new reality, to NPI, to R&D, what you learn from the field, the failure you encounter. So you change the scenario faster because you are relying on blocks. And more people can use that software, no programming language knowledge are required. And then you can really control where these new files go on your production or development station in your factories all around the world. So these are the 3 applications we wanted to show you today. And I think it's all for me. Matt, anything?
Sure. Yeah, no, thanks a lot, Eric. That's a lot of great content in there. And as we said, at the end of the day, to work efficiently with tests, it needs to be accessible to the people that need it. And these people are not necessarily software developers. We're talking about people in roles such as quality engineers, production engineers, lab technicians, people who are experts in understanding their product, but not necessarily experts in software development. So giving them the ability to modify test plans, just like you showed, can be quite powerful. At the same time, any risk of breaking the code is removed thanks to the fact that we're using these locked reusable building blocks. And at the same time, we've built a bunch of tools in there to validate that the test parameters that these guys are setting are still within the specified limits using the interface of the test plan editor.
Yeah, exactly. By removing dependency on a specific user, product testing is accelerated and becomes more affordable. And by combining test plan editor and deploy, I mean, you can be confident that the quality of your product is in good hand. Thank you very much for your time today. Matt and I are both available for answering your question if you have any. Thanks.
Thanks, Eric. Thanks, Matt. That was great. We actually do have a few questions here. If anyone else has any questions, please go ahead and ask, and we will try to get to everything. So our first question is, if multiple users have access to the test blocks, how do you control quality?
Yeah, it's a good question. We haven't shown that today. It's a two-part, I would say, for that. So first of all, every software that we have as a kind of a user management module to it, so you can really limit who has access to what. Okay, so with user right and all. So the first thing I would do is do not give access to test plan editor to people that don't know about the test, the sequence, the station, or your product, right? So limit the people that can edit those scenario, be in control of that with the user management tool. So that would be part one. And if anything happen, also if you're using test plan, Averna deploy, so that would be part two. So with Averna deploy, every changes is tracked. So as you create new version of a package, as you linked it to new station, you subscribe, you change it from development to production, everything is tracked. You know what, when, where all this happened, and you can always really roll back to a previous version without any problem. Then I guess you have a little bit of things to do on your side. I mean, you do have a process in place. You want to be in control of what you push to production in your factory. So you do it by paper or you do it with Averna deploy. It's still your responsibility to kind of qualify those tests before pushing it. So limit the access is one. Tracking would be the second step, and making sure you are in control of your process would be the total thing to do to
I would add, Eric, that standardization is very closely tied to quality. So being able to standardize these building blocks as test sequences and keeping full traceability of versioning them, you do make sure that everybody is using the same building blocks, and that's part of it. If you find an issue somewhere and you address it within the new version, you know that it's addressed everywhere. That's how you maintain the quality of your product.
Yeah, correct.
Great, thank you. Our next question is, the UI seems to suggest that each block of execution must be in series. Is there a way to create a workflow with parallel execution?
Yes, if you design your block to be able to handle things in parallel, we could have, let's say I design a block, and it's just on top of my head right now. It might not be the best example, but let's say we do have a block that has been created with a input parameter that allows you to choose how many in parallel gets executed. Totally feasible. So then you have the block, then you go like the example with the time where I was changing from 5 minutes or 2 minutes. That was a input parameter that control a little bit how that block behave, right? It's waiting 5 minutes or waiting only 2. So I'm controlling how that block is working with that input parameter. So you can imagine an input parameter that would be how many threads in parallel or how many power supply in parallel you want to control. So just have to have the hook in your block to be able to control that. Yeah, totally possible.
Everything, all functionality of test plan is still available.
Yeah.
But it's true, when you define the test sequence inside of the test plan editor, it is sequential, but that does not mean that underneath the hood you're still, all the threading and synchronization tools are still available to you in the definition of the building block. So if it is a multi-fixture, multi-site fixture, your test steps can still handle that.
Yeah, and we can do this also in Averna launch only. So if you do have a sequential test that's running from top to bottom on only one unit or only one thread or anything, you can, if you do have what Matt just talked about, having a test station with multiple nests. So sometimes we see small product being tested in parallel on the same asset. So 2 phones next to each other in a rack where you close something and the test is launched by itself. So in that example, we could also use launch, configure it to have 2 units in parallel in the screen. You would have a similar UI tailored to that, and multiple units can be tested in parallel, and that will also work because test plan in the background makes sure that there is no collision with communicating with the instrument and things like that. The synchronization is handled at that level.
So if our answer doesn't address your use case, just let us know. We'd be very curious to get to know about it.
Perfect. Our next question is, can you do a massive modification in test plan editor?
Yes, great question. I didn't show it today. What I showed is that you can create kind of a ramp, right? Where you click on the plus at the bottom and it adds the same block over and over, and you can do the let's say monitoring voltage in about 5 minutes, 10 minutes, 15 minutes. But let's imagine your case, you want a much more monitoring of that. So let's say every second for an hour. Okay, in test plan editor, it's going to be long to create manually these tests if it's not already created, and you can use the copy paste function of a duplicate category, right? So we do have a import export that is there for that. So you can export it first, and then you can re-import a whole test plan, and you can select part of it, you can append it, you can merge part of it. So you can play with two existing test plan and do stuff with it. And also on top of that, to accelerate your edition, so you can export it and open it in Testan. So it's not Testan, Excel, sorry. And it's compatible with Excel in a way where you can leverage the power of Testan, where you can put formulas and just drag one column. So you open it in Testan, in Excel, sorry again. You go to the right category, you find the one test that you have, add a bunch of rows there, create your formula, so +1, +1, +1, right? So to have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 in the input parameter, drag it down. Now you have 100 tests there. You import it, you save it, you import it in test plan editor, and bingo.
Yeah, it's true. If there's one tool that all engineers know, it's most likely Excel or Sheets.
Yeah.
So our next question is, how is the software deployed? I would apply this to everything that you've shown today.
Okay. So how is it deployed? So if we're talking about installers and stuff, so it's like any other application. So you have kind of a installer next type of way. So let's take Averna Launch in the first place. So Averna Launch, since it's a GUI that helps operator run a sequence, it's installed on the test asset. So on the test station local to that machine where you launch the test. That would be for launch. Test plan editor, it's much more of a development tool. So you can install it on your desktop in your cubicle or whatever, where you're developing your test or changing your scenario. I mean, you install it on a machine you're comfortable using it, and you can use it. And lastly, for deploy, there's more than one installer with deploy. There's a server that keeps tracks of everything. So what I've showed you, what you've seen today as UI with Averna Deploy is the editor part. So again, since it's a edition, you're in edition mode, configuration mode, you can install it anywhere. So again, on your development environment or on your PC where you do your stuff in your cubicle as test engineer, right? So you install it there. We do have a server, so that server can be installed anywhere in your facilities, on the cloud, whatever, and the station connects to that server, and the whole thing works. So it depends on the software, but it's generic installers, and we can help you do that. I mean, there's no problem there.
Yeah, and what's neat too, the repository that's holding all of the files, I mean, it can really be defined anywhere. It could be a network drive, it could be a cloud location. As long as your computer has access to it, we can simply store those files anywhere. So yeah, some customers have already moved that into either a SharePoint site or a OneDrive or whatever storage location they're using, so that they're able to just leverage their cloud storage already to manage the location for those test loads.
Perfect. Next, while doing parallel workflow, is there a way to have those blocks talk to each other, like data sharing?
Yes, that would be possible. Anything that is possible in Testan is still possible within those blocks. Like I said, those blocks are Testan sequence. So if you create kind of a semaphore between two blocks, you have the thing in place to be able to synchronize them, have them existing in memory at the same time without collision. So you can do that for sure while it's running. Testan is still there in the background, so the execution context that you know if you use Testan is still there. So you have all the local variables, parameters, station variables. The callbacks are there. I mean, it's Testan running in the background. So the test plan editor is just a way to help you exit and change the scenario. It doesn't change the fact, or it doesn't limit ability to do stuff.
Sure. Yeah, you're simply setting the order of the building blocks in the way that in which it's executed, as well as allowing simple way to edit all parameters, test limits. And again, those parameters we've shown, the example you've shown had one parameter and test limits, but those parameters can be countless as well.
Perfect. And I think we only have time for one last question. So this will be it. If we didn't get your question yet today, either Eric or Matt will be in touch with you to reach out and make sure you have all the information you need. So for our final question, once you collect test data, is there a tool that you recommend for analytics specifically?
I mentioned Prologent up front. It's a tool that we've been working with for over a decade, deploying it in very large sizes. I mean, we have customers who are using it in over 30 factories worldwide. The tool continues being developed, and I'd be very glad to show. Maybe we'll do a future webinar focusing on where Prologent is. But it's certainly a solution that we use in house, and we'd recommend it to any of our customers.
Perfect. Well, Eric, Matt, thank you again, and thank you to everyone in attendance. Please expect a copy of this webinar sent to you shortly, and we hope that you enjoy the rest of your day.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you.